Hey, in this video, let's go ahead and do something fun. Let's create this crazy looking alien plant. All right. So to start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Lightbox and just double click on the Dynamesh. So here I have the Dynamesh. And the very first thing I would like to do is just shape it into something a little different, right? So what I'm going to do is go to deformation, and I'm just going to crank up the gravity. So this is going to be kind of the base of my plant. Okay, so next I would like to pull out the sort of the stem, and to do that I'm going to simply grab, let's grab our snake hook brush, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on the Sculptress Pro in zBrush, and maybe let's just pull this out. And I do have my symmetry on, so I can actually use it to my advantage, and instead of you just having the X being turned on, I'm going to turn on R, and I'm going to switch it from X to Y, and maybe instead of 8, let's go down to like 5. All right, and now let's see if we can pull out some kind of a cool shape out of it. So maybe I'm going to make my brush a little larger and just see if I can make some kind of a plant looking thing. And maybe it's like a tree. And the cool thing about Sculptress is that it will allow you to re-Dynamesh on the fly. So you can see that you never really run out of geometry. The old Sculptress Pro will just continue to try to add more and more as you're pulling. And that's a really cool trick. When you're done pulling out geometry, then you can of course turn it off and start just sculpting. So like in my case, let's say I'm happy with this, and I'm going to turn Sculptress Pro off, and now let's say I want to just maybe shape these a little better, right? So one thing I could do is grab something like pinch, and maybe I want these a little sharper. So you could see now I don't need the Sculptress Pro because I'm just kind of adjusting the geometry that's already there. I don't need new geometry, so hopefully that makes sense. And another thing I can do is from the top view, I can hold down the control key, maybe make a kind of like a mask. And keep in mind right now I'm really at low resolution. I'm only at 128 with my Dynamesh. But if I hold on control and click, I can reverse my mask and maybe grab the move tool and push this down, or we can actually use inflate. And if you don't know where your inflate is, it's actually in, you can see on the bottom here, it says tools, deformation, inflate. So deformation, inflate is right here. So instead of inflating it up like this, I'm gonna push it down, just make kind of like almost like a cavity. I'm gonna do it maybe a couple times. So I have something like this. I'm gonna hold on control and drag. And now what I'd like to do is I'm gonna bump up my resolution from 256 to 120, from 128 to 256. So just give myself a little more resolution, and just do control and drag and see if we can re-Dynamesh it. So now I jump to 586 points. So there's a little more geometry. If we turn on our polyframe, we can see how many more points there are, right? So now I can hold on the shift key and maybe smooth this out a little. And next I'm gonna put the sphere right inside of it. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go to my subtools. I'm gonna append a sphere. Then I'm gonna select my sphere, grab my move tool, and just put it in place. Maybe scale it. And my intention is to make it more like, kind of like an egg looking thing. So something like this. I think it's pretty cool. All right, if we wanted to, we can adjust it a little bit so it's a little less stretchy looking. All right, so now I have something like this. And let's say I'm happy with it. Maybe another thing I can do is grab my move tool and just kind of reshape the bottom a little more so it's a little more like a tree bark instead of like this blobby thing. So maybe one thing I could do is from the bottom I can just pull this out a little. Looks like a cartoon star, but I just want something it's a little more interesting, I think, than just a blob on the bottom. All right, so let's say I'm happy with this, and now I want to take it into Substance Painter for some fun texturing. Right, so I have two shapes, and what I would like to do is I would like to have both of them on the same UV. Right, so like if this is an alien tree or a plant, I don't really want them to be on the separate UV. I don't want to have two textures. I just want one texture. Maybe it's a game asset, and this should be relatively, you know, low poly. So I'm just going to inflate my egg here a little more. And all right, so let's see, what do we do next? So now we have this really high resolution pieces, right? So this one is, you know, 586 points. This one is 8,000. And how do we turn it into kind of a low res item? So there's a couple ways of doing it. We can use the Decimation master, or we can try to use the zBrush zRemesher, or the Decimation master. So maybe we can take a look at both and see which one would be better, right? So I'm going to select my tree, and let's go ahead and turn this on so we can see the geo. And let's go ahead and do pre-process current. So this is going to take a few seconds. And now I'm going to leave this at 20% and just go ahead and do decimate. All right, so this is the new geometry. It's 117,000 points. So I think I can get it much lower. I'm going to go to 5%. 29,000. I'm going to keep dialing it down. I'm going to go to 1. All right, so now it's becoming a little friendlier to a game engine. It's at 5,000 or almost 6,000, but still, for a game asset, this is probably a little too heavy still. I'm going to go to 0.5. Just keep dialing it down. 3,000. 0.2. And I think this is what I was looking for, something kind of a low poly piece. All right, so that is, I'm happy with this. I'm actually gonna go with 1100 points. It's holding the shape really nice, and I don't really need it to be anything different than this because it's not going to be animated. It's going to be kind of a static piece, game asset. All right, let's go ahead and do the same thing with this. And just for the sake of exercise, instead of using decimation, let's go ahead and use the zRemesher instead. So I'm going to go to zRemesher, and I'm going to set this really low to like 0.5. And I'll leave the adapt on for the first run and just run it. All right, so this is my egg so far. I would like it to be even less. So I'm going to say half, turn the adapt off, and do another zRemesh. And I'm going to undo it, and I'm going to turn on my active symmetry, and I'm okay with this being maybe symmetrical. So let's go ahead and try this again. All right, maybe even do one more, just see what that looks like. Yeah, I think this is what I wanted, something really low poly. All right, so now you can see we have two pieces. Both, one has been decimated, the other one has been zRemeshed, and it's totally fine to marry the two as one, because this is just, again, an alien plant that's not going to be animated or anything. I mean, technically it would be kind of neat if in Maya we added some joints and maybe made this pulsate or something in the, that would be a really cool addition. But for the sake of this exercise, I just want to maybe see if we can make this into one piece. All right, so the next thing I would like to do is I'm going to combine them. So I'm going to merge them down. And now they are on one layer, right? Which is cool. If we wanted to, we could try to use the UV master to give us some kind of automated UVs here in zBrush. So just to see what that would look like, let's go ahead and turn off symmetry, because our tree is not really symmetrical. It's kind of organic looking. And let's go ahead and do unwrap. And then let's look at flatten and see what that gave us. So these are the UVs for the for both the egg and the tree. And keep in mind, you can move them around in here if you wanted to. So you could grab your move tool, you can actually shift them around if you wanted to. So grab the move and maybe in this case I would have to actually do Control Shift and click to mask one of them, and definitely press X to turn off the symmetry. And now, of course, if you wanted to, you can move them around, you can rotate them, maybe you want them positioned or scaled in a different way. I'm actually fine with what this is, so I'm going to do Control Shift click to, or Control drag to unmask this, and I'm actually okay with this being my UVs just for the sake of this exercise. So I'm going to do unflatten, and let's go ahead and add some detail to this so we can bake, so we can have a high version and a low version just for the sake of this exercise, right? So for that, I'm going to turn off my frames here, and let's go ahead and create kind of a higher version of this. So I'm going to do a Control D, maybe a couple times. So I'm going to go, let's see, how many times did I press this? So I have level 5, right? So level 5, 476,000 points. Now that's a lot of points, right? This gives us some really cool resolution to maybe sculpt something cool on here. And just to do something quick, we can go to maybe like the standard brush, grab like the drag, and for the alpha, maybe do something like this alpha 23. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some detail right on top of this egg here. So I'm just going to drag it and add something like that. So it looks kind of a, maybe it's a little too much intensity. So I'm kind of looking for like a alien looking thing. So let's do one here. And you know, I'm starting to see some I could tell that the resolution is still kind of low. You could see that here, right? And I would like to actually fix that. I'm going to do Control D again, another give me even more points, and I'm level 6, and see if that gives me a little better resolution for my egg. I think I like that a little better. All right, so now we added something like this to our egg. Maybe we can even add maybe like a crack. So to do that, I can just use a Damien standard brush. And let's see if we can just draw maybe like a crack on here. And I'm not even using my tablet, I'm using my mouse, so I don't have the ends being pinched or anything. So sometimes if you are too lazy and you want to cheat, you could just simply grab the pinch brush and achieve the result that a tablet would give you. Just a crazy little trick. So maybe there's like a little crack here. Maybe there's one on this side too. Let's make one on this side as well. Grab my Damien standard and just do another one. Just something different. Maybe this one actually has this too. All right, now keep in mind these are two different poly groups. So if we wanted to hide this tree, we could just do Control Shift and click, and then click on it again to hide it. Maybe that's easier to see while you're sculpting something, you know, that's is being blocked by another piece. So now I can do the same trick. I can grab my pinch and just pinch the sides a little. So it kind of looks like almost like a crack. Maybe this is kind of sharp. All right, very cool. So I have something like this. And I kind of like actually that this is like breaking the surface a little bit. Now if you do Control Shift and click again, you can bring your tree back. Very nice. And for this guy, let's just do something fast as well. I'm just gonna grab my standard brush again. And I'm gonna leave the drag on, and let's just drag something, a few more details on here. So maybe let's go for this alpha 25. Looks pretty interesting. Let's see what that looks like on like a plant or a tree. And instead of adding it, maybe I'm going to subtract it, so you can see that it has no, I don't have the symmetry on, just to make it a little more interesting, but I'm going to try to drag it in different directions. So if somebody does spin it, maybe it doesn't look exactly the same, but that's not definitely not necessary. All right, so here we are. We have this cool looking alien plant tree thingy. That's we have both high resolution and low resolution at this point. So our high resolution is 1.9 million, right? And our low resolution is only 1200. Now, how do we take both of these out and bake them in Substance Painter? So to do that, let's go ahead and export this out first. So usually what you want to do is go to Preferences, check your export settings, which I always have problems finding. Here it is. So make sure your groups are off. Maybe you don't want to combine. You want to combine your poly groups into one, so it exports it out. I actually have it dragged on my UI, so I know that this is going to be exported as one file instead of, if you have this on, it will keep all the poly groups separated, and then when you bring it into other package, 3D package, you'll have pieces, right? So that's important. I just want it as one. So I'm going to go ahead and export this out. I'm going to call it Alien Tree and I'm gonna call this alien tree underscore low. Save. All right, and now let's go ahead and export the other one, which is our big one. So we can try to export it as 1.9 million. Maybe that's a little too excessive. If you feel like that's a little too crazy, why don't we delete the lower? Now, you definitely want to probably save your layers, right? So you could duplicate it so you have the original, and then hide the original. And now in this one, what you could do is we can go to geometry and delete the lower. So now we only have this really high one, and the high one is just super high, right? Maybe it's a little too high. So why don't we bring it down just a little bit for Substance Painter to have easier time. So I'm going to pre-process this really quick. Okay, once it's done, let's go ahead and put this to like 20% and decimate it. And once it finished, you can see that it went from 1.9 million points to 381,000 points. But if you look at it, it doesn't look any different. So if we turn our polyframe on, we can still see that it's very, very dense. So it's clearly a super high version. But if we bake it, you know, Substance Painter is going to have much easier time with 380,000 points versus 1.9 million. So now let's export this out as our high version. So I'm just going to say, instead of low, I'm going to rename this to high and say save. All right, now let's jump into Substance Painter and see if we can bake this. All right, here I am in Substance Painter. So now I'm going to go to File, New, and let's put our resolution size to maybe 2K, since this is going to be, you know, like a game asset. And I'm going to select, I'm going to leave this on metal roughness. I definitely don't want it to auto unwrap because we did that in zBrush. And maybe double check to see where, you know, where is going to be used. I'm going to leave mine on DirectX for now and go to select. And let's go ahead and grab our low tree and say okay. All right, here it is. First thing I'm going to do right away is come down to my texture set settings, click on bake. I'm going to set this to 2K as well. And let's go ahead and grab our high, which is right here. I'm going to say open. And for anti-aliasing, I'm going to set this to 2. And I think this should work. Let's go ahead and bake it. So I'm just going to bake the high one over the low and see if it can bring all our beautiful detail onto this mesh. All right, so let's check this out. And if I just simply spin this around, you can see that the low one, right? And we know this is low, obviously, because we can come down and turn our frame on. We could see that this is indeed a low resolution one. And the low resolution has all the high baked right on it. So this is clearly an awesome low poly game asset. So the next step would be to do a nice job creating. Let's go ahead and maybe change our map here. I'm going to turn the shadows on, and I like to turn them down kind of low, so I don't really want them to interfere with my painting. I'm going to leave them at like 15. And I do like to turn on, just for the sake of presentation, I'm going to turn this on just so it's a little prettier. And I do always turn on anti-aliasing, so you could see the difference. Look at the edges right here, and when I turn this on, it makes it true to what the actual model looks like. So that helps me as well. All right, so if you hold down Shift and right click, you can move the lights and see what your model looks like. I'm very, very happy with this. I think this is great. Next, let's go ahead and apply a couple fun kind of alien textures and see if we can paint this up really quick. All right, now let's go ahead and throw some color on this. So the first thing I'm going to do is just simply add a fill layer. And on my end, what I'm going to do is just select kind of a bluish, dark blue. And for the roughness, maybe don't make it too shiny. Somewhere in the middle should work. All right. Now, one of the things I do want to do is I really want to emphasize some of the detail that we created in zBrush. So to do that, I'm going to create another fill layer on top. Press Alt and then click on the color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the generator and just click on this curvature. And what that's going to do is it's going to emphasize some of this detail that we have. And to be honest with you, I just want the color, so I'm going to do Alt Color. I just want these highlights here. And another thing that I could do is maybe under curvature or under global balance, maybe I can tone this down a little bit so it's not so crazy. So something like that. So this is without it and this is with it. So you can see that it sort of stylistically emphasizes some of the detail that we have. And the next thing I can do is maybe let's do an overlay and maybe turn this down just a little bit. So it's there, but it looks like it's almost looks like it's hand painted. So I think that looks pretty cool. Another thing that I can do is maybe I want to emphasize some of this detail even more. So I could create another layer on top, and let's just select Alt and click on the normal, and let's double up these normals. So to do that, I'm going to go to my project, and since the normal has been baked, you can find it in your project, so you can just grab it and drop it right on top. And when you do, you can see how this is even more kind of exaggerated. So you can see the difference, right? So it's a little stronger. And maybe it's a good idea to also name these. So this is going to be, maybe this is called edges or curvature, right? All right, so we can slowly start building something that makes sense and something that's interesting. If I go back to my library, maybe I can grab something that can create some noise. So maybe this guy here is kind of fun. Looks like he has kind of a noisy texture, so I'm going to grab this texture and just throw it right on top and hold down the Alt key to just select the color and maybe do an overlay. And now we can just control the number, how much noise we have. I just want just a little bit, just so it doesn't look too plain. So maybe somewhere in this area. And another thing that I could do is if I go to my smart materials, I downloaded this bone stylized from Substance Source portal. You can grab that too. It's called bone stylized. And maybe that would be a good material for the egg. So I'm just gonna throw that on top. And I'm gonna add a black mask. And let's go ahead and just simply select this. All right, so we have something that's starting to look really interesting. All right, so lastly, let's do one more trick. I'm gonna add another layer on top and do again a Alt color and add a filter and click this baked light effect. And you can see it gives you this really cool baked in lighting effect. So now if I go select this and set it to soft light, you can see just adds just a little more interesting, a little more dramatic effect to our asset. And of course you can keep painting and doing more. And I really would like this to be a little lighter. So maybe something like this, I think, is a little better. So I actually like this. I think this is this would work. So go ahead and play around and maybe add some more effects and more filters and whatever. But this is pretty cool. The only last thing I would do is I still feel like it would be fun to break this up a little bit. It feels a little too similar. So maybe one of the things we could do is grab something like this brush here and just simply using the color, maybe I'll do like a lighter blue. Maybe we can make some, let's add some, maybe this one here. Let's add some noise to this so it's a little more interesting. So maybe something, trying to make it more organic so it's not so calculated, right? So it's a little just thrown around there. So this, maybe these areas could be a little lighter. I can always go to filter and do a, let's do this blur slope just for fun. Let's crank this up a little. Alright, so I'm going to set this to overlay, and you can see that it just added just a little touch of color. And of course, if we wanted to intensify it, we can always duplicate it and make it just a little more interesting. So, alright, so I think this is going to conclude the tutorial for the alien tree. I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.